So this, what we've been discussing for the last, this is the third week, are the Paramitas. And the Paramitas occur in that body of the Buddha's teachings that has to do with this universal awakening. Like every sentient being has the potential to become free of these afflictions of the mind, and when they do become free of the afflictions of the mind, then they become liberated from all forms of suffering. This is basically the basic premise of Buddhism. And one can either apply the methods and free oneself, in which case you would fall under the category or into the psychological outlook of being one who is interested in benefiting oneself in the most maximum way. And then this particular teaching of the Paramitas occurs in the Mahayana approach, which is this universal awakening, that it's not really it's not that it's not correct. I think in the Mahayana the emphasis is on how it's not really possible to become free of suffering for your own sake, because there'll always be others who are suffering, and so the real way to become free of suffering is to free every other being from suffering. But as long as we ourselves are one of those, we don't have the resources. And of course then this directs us to thinking about, well, what does it mean to be, say, free of suffering, or in Buddhist terminology, maybe other forms, other ways, we have this term enlightenment. And like, what does that mean? And in Buddhism, then enlightenment means the recognition of one's own nature, the nature of one's own mind. That is to say, one's mind, when it becomes free of all those factors that are obstructing our experience of that nature. Basically, and this is what we learn when we start to practice meditation, there's all this content. We're constantly churning out content, thoughts and emotions. We don't know which one even comes first. But we're always churning this out, and it's all about content, and we never really get a sense of the container. So in just simple terms, then we could say maybe that this nature is the container. And it's not simply that we need to eliminate the content. That doesn't work. I don't know if you've tried, but it doesn't work. It leads. But especially in the Mahayana, the view, to say the philosophical view, the outlook of the Mahayana is that content is inseparable from mind's nature. but we are experiencing it as being separate because of our habit of duality. I and other, my experience, I as an experiencer of an experience. So me as a point in the universe. There's always this feeling of duality. Subject, I am a subject of my objects. And this mine, there's I, then my, and mine. I own my objects, even the ones I hate, even the ones I don't ever want to run into. When I do run into them, I still own them, and I'm stuck with this feeling of hating running into them. People, situations, failure, poverty. We are habituated to this sort of dualistic approach. And in the teachings, then this is considered to be one of the fundamental clouds that prevent us from experiencing our own nature inseparable, like non-dualistically, free of the habit of self and other, my mind, like the nature of my mind. That's a very dualistic. So again, I don't want to veer off into too complicated things. Again, because I like to emphasize the practicality of the teachings. These six paramitas that we've been that we're discussing. This is the third one today, is patience. I should try and get to it, shouldn't I? It's not simply that these are sort of behaviors of generosity, discipline, patience, sort of joyful diligence, mental stability, like we've talked a little bit about, and wisdom. These 6 qualities. These are the 6 paramitas. Again, paramita means has this sense of transcendence. Not even sense of transcendence. Paramita means going to the other side. So it literally means transcending. So generosity, transcendent generosity, generosity that transcends self-giving to other. Discipline. We talked last week about last month, discipline. The discipline that transcends I refraining from doing some negative action, I performing some positive action, transcends that. The same patience, transcendent patience. Of course, this again is very, advanced, and generally we like to hear. I think I don't know. Maybe you do or not, but people generally want to know, how do I act? I want to know how to act. I want my behavior. Am I supposed to give up meat, or am I supposed to wear socks, or what? Give me something to hold on to, something that I can behave according to. And so, of course, then we can present them as we have been as being modes of behaving, but the underlying drive that both directs us to these practices, and the motivation when we engage in these practices is one of love and compassion and acting for the benefit of others. I have to have that element. And of course, to cultivate this love and compassion and this attitude or this motivation to benefit others, this altruistic motivation. Altruistic means not out of self-interest. In order to cultivate those attitudes, then again, they rely on a certain worldview. Basically, that things are changeable. Things are changeable. If something is a thing, it's changeable. Things aren't permanent. Which includes you and your emotions and your thoughts. I don't have to tell you that your thoughts are changeable. I don't have to tell you that your feelings are changeable. They're very unreliable. But we have to accept, or have to honor that description of things as being impermanent and apply it to all aspects of our experience. Not just pick and choose. Like, okay, well, those are impermanent, but I want this to be permanent. If we're really interested in the truth, that's the goal of Buddhism. So if you're not interested in the truth, it's very questionable. We have to want to know what the truth is, and there is such a thing as truth. One truth is that things are impermanent. You're impermanent, and everything you see, hear, taste, touch, smell, think of is impermanent. When you plumb the depths and breadth of impermanence as I guess that's sort of the one kind of legal obsession, that we can take. What do you say? Be obsessed with. We can be obsessed with it because it will always ring true. Even the one who's obsessed about impermanence, it will eventually erode that sense of self as being something that is unchangeable. We can't but have that feeling. We can't help but have a feeling that we exist as some sort of monolithic presence. That regardless of what happened, where we find ourselves and what we do, what we read, what we hear about her, there's always this feeling that there is this unit in here that is processing all of that. This feeling of self, a thing that sort of peaks up when you hear the name of that self called, your name, what your name is. And so thinking many, many times, often, and at any level about impermanence is a great antidote to our habit of thinking that things are not impermanent, which we can't help but think. Is that clear? Anybody? I really have to always say that. I don't know why. It's my obsession. It's a teaching. It's to always because impermanence. It's almost a linchpin for anything, for everything that you want to talk about in the Dharma. The implications of impermanence as a lived experience are very important. And it's not that impermanence is some principle. It's not like Buddha didn't discover impermanence or invent it. Okay, now you're... And I remember somebody told me that when I was young. I came back from India, and I was sort of what do you call it? An identified Buddhist. People kind of knew me that way. He says, "Oh, I love Buddhism, but I could never become a Buddhism because I can't do the impermanence. I don't like the impermanence part." I couldn't believe that. Impermanence has nothing to do with Buddhism. Matter of fact, Buddhism says even the Buddhism will be impermanent. At a certain point, there won't exist Dharma because of impermanence, because Dharma is a thing. Matter of fact, one of the dictionary Sanskrit meaning of Dharma is thing, phenomena. That's why we say Buddha Dharma. It means Buddha's thing, Buddha's teachings. Like in India, people like the Brahmins, they do they do their Dharma, they practice their Dharma, they're doing their thing. We have that colloquial expression, oh, do your thing. Yeah.
I know I'm in the sunlight here. I always have a question about this, though. I think I understand impermanence. I realize I'm getting old and all that stuff, and everything falls apart and all this stuff and all that. But impermanence implies the opposite always. That's the problem with vocabulary. Once you say impermanence, you're referring as compared to permanence. That's my problem with language.
Well, that's
perhaps what you're saying here. You're referring to something that's impermanent. Everything is impermanent, but to say that also implies that you're comparing it to something which is permanence. And that's where I am.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. A couple things. One is we are asking language to do more than it's capable of doing. Language only attempts to explain things. And it fails because, if I say something is red, that doesn't mean that it's also black. Language only can go so far. Impermanence isn't being, there's no thing that corresponds to the word impermanence. Just like red. Red doesn't exist by itself. It always has to be, something has to be red, yeah?
No, I would disagree in that.
Oh, okay. Finally. Somebody disagrees.
Red refers to something else. It always does. If everything was red, there would be no color. So when you have something that's red, it's referring to something else if you want to recognize it as red. I can't have red with any other color. Or, I can't have it if everything is red. If everything in this room is totally red, there would be no red.
Right.
Right. But as it is, there is red. And if we refer to red, then we are comparing to something else. As we say impermanence, I realize that language fails at this point, but I still think that what are you trying to compare impermanence?
Okay. Let's go to that point. Yeah. Otherwise, it gets just semantic. But yeah, impermanence refers to our belief in permanence, in permanence. We have a habit of thinking things are permanent, whether it's genetically driven for survival or what have you. But as it says, the reason why we should think about impermanence is to antidote a mistake. The mistake that we're permanent.
Gotcha.
And impermanence is not a principle. It's a mere description of things. Like a Buddha said, duje tamje mitakpo means duje tamje, all, we say everything, but the technically we say all phenomena are by nature impermanent. It's their nature to be impermanent. And the benefit of focusing, if I can say, the benefit of understanding impermanence is that you begin to understand the nature of things.
As compared to our mistake of thinking that there is something out there which is permanent. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more subtle aspects of impermanence would be to stop halfway through that sentence, that you think that there's something out there, period. There's gross impermanence, like, this falls and breaks, and I'm upset because I wanted it to be permanent, which it can't be. Things can't be permanent. They weren't, then they are, and then they won't be. And then more subtle is that, actually, what is a thing? A thing is actually something made up of other things than itself.
I think I was looking for the mistaken answer that what is then the thing, what is then out there that is permanent? That was sort of my mistake. You see what I mean?
Yes, okay, yeah.
I think that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, that's one, I see.
Is there any difference between impermanence, change, and entropy? Or is that kind of just the same?
Okay, entropy, I'm not so sure about entropy. I know we're supposed to watch out for it when we're having organizations and things. I'm not sure exactly entropy, but fluctuation, change, impermanence, transient, whatever has that same implication. Yeah, there's French words, German words, all kinds of words, whatever they are. It's just a description of how things are not permanent. It's sort of it's a negative, in that sense. I ran into someone who never heard of that word, impermanent, in a prison. When I went to prison, I've told this story, but I have a weekly group there, meditation group. And one day I didn't write it, I don't know who wrote it, but impermanence was written on the blackboard. And it was it's always my favorite topic for some reason. I think it's because it's so simple. I mean, but it was there, and this guy, I'd never seen him before, this gentleman, this inmate, he said, what's that word? And I said, and I looked, and I didn't see it before, and I said, this is impermanence. He goes, what does it mean? And then I didn't know, because he's a prisoner, he was really big, with tattoos, all the white t-shirt, and up the tattoos under his chin, and really a monstrous guy with an unusual haircut. And I said, what do you mean? I didn't want to I've gone into prisons for 10, 15 years now, so I'm a little bit agile, But I wanted to find, what do you mean? Do you want to know what it literally, what does it mean, or like this? He goes, I've never heard it before. And then I realized, have you heard of permanence? He goes, yeah, I've heard of permanence. I said, this is when something's not permanent, it's impermanence. And he's thinking He goes, but what about the castles of Spain? Aren't they permanent? And where he got that from, I have no idea. It was the strangest thing to come out of his mouth, And I said, think about the castles of Spain. I couldn't even know what he was. like everything is impermanent, is crumbling. It's it's got deferred maintenance so that it's falling apart and everything. He goes, oh yeah. And he stood up and he started shaking his head. And he goes, God, this is too much. I can't take it. And he walked out. He goes, oh, I got to think about that more. I can't. I mean, it was like a 35-year-old, 40-year-old man. He'd never thought about it before. I was kind of like taken aback by the freshness of that experience. All the guys, they'd heard me for years, bellowing about impermanence, and they were just, it was very interesting. But since impermanence is not like a universal principle that exists, then it defies the tricks of words, like, well, then impermanence is permanent, that kind of thing. I know that's not what you were saying, but it's really a description of things, and to, like it says in one sutra, it says he, okay, but let's say he one who understands the nature of things understands the Dharma. One who understands the Dharma, or one who truly understands the nature of things, the nature of phenomena, understands the Dharma. One who truly understands the Dharma understands Buddha. Yeah, so there's many dimensions to that exercise of how to think about impermanence and logical methods, and then gaining some intuitive understanding and so forth. But I think it's the one of the most important aspects of Dharma practice is to understand impermanence. Then what you do on top of that, not on top of that, but sort of figuratively speaking, with an understanding of impermanence, then when you meditate, then you understand a little bit that, all these thoughts and emotions that are coming, they're impermanent. And so that you don't adhere to them, they don't stick to you. Because you have an understanding. It's not that you're repressing or trying to get rid of your thoughts, but as your thoughts arise, if you have an understanding of impermanence, then your understanding of impermanence deepens, because you see that these are things too. They weren't, then they're there, and then they're not. And through the repetition, through repeating meditation, Buddhists, they repeat meditate. They don't just do it once, and not that. And they don't do it because they like it. I don't think either. A rare bird likes it, but do it because it takes time to develop that view of thoughts and emotions as being just what they are, but that they are impermanent. And that sense of understanding that what is arising is impermanent frees you from the grip of whatever it is, attachment, aversion. So check it out in your own experience. Okay, we have to say something about patience before the time is up. I don't have to, but the Bodhisattva, you've heard the term Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva path. A Bodhisattva is an ordinary person who simply makes a promise, a vow, or gives rise to the intention to attain enlightenment as the best possible means to bring benefit, ultimate and temporary benefit to all beings. That's a bodhisattva. Someone who promises themselves that they will attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. That's a bodhisattva. Okay? So then that bodhisattva, just the one who just made the promise, the little lowercase, small font bodhisattva, 4-point bodhisattva, really small bodhisattva. Then they begin training their mind in the loving compassion, particularly in what's called the 4 measurable qualities, or the 4 measurable attitudes of love, compassion, love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Love, what do you say? Love. Loving kindness, I think. Maitri means a loving kindness, compassion. Loving kindness meaning the wish that others were happy. I desire you to be happy. Just like when people fall in love, they just naturally have this wish to make the other happy. They buy things, they say things, they leave text messages, all kinds of things, just as an expression to make somebody happy. And that's love. In this bodhisattva training, you make it immeasurable. It's not just one or 5 people, but it's immeasurable. It means friends, enemies, same. That's why equanimity is one of them. And when you're actually training in cultivating these 4 attitudes, you begin with equanimity. So you're not fighting yourself. And you cultivate the sameness of friends, enemies, by various means. And it's not just that you come out with this neutral feeling, but your equanimity is that all beings want to be happy. That's really the relative unifying force amongst all creatures, animals and what have you. If there's Venetians or Jupiterians or Martians or whoever, they do what they do. They're getting something out of it. If they have a mind, that mind craves happiness. Even one little cell animal, bacterias or what have you, if they have a mind, that mind wants to be comfortable. It doesn't want to be disturbed. Basically, these 2 forces. So it has attraction and it has aversion. So this loving kindness is the wish that all beings equally have happiness. And compassion, the second one is compassion, is the mind that the mind that yearns for others to be free of suffering. One is the wish that they have happiness. This is the wish that they're free of suffering. We could say that cultivating these qualities, maybe we could say antidote or harnesses are attachment and aversion that I mentioned earlier. Only now we're not attached to things for ourselves. We're attached to others' happiness. We're not attached to our own happiness. We're just one. Others are infinite, practically. And aversion is having an aversion for others' suffering. And based on our own experience of suffering and our own experience of happiness, we can say that others want happiness and they don't want to suffer. So these 2 areas, these 2 attitudes we cultivate in a We can just start out with one person or one person or one bunch, and a bigger. Then throw in some enemies, some people that really irritate you. People that are really on the other side of your thinking, and then grow it. And everybody wants to be happy. And everybody has had some kind of happiness, and then they lose it. And they're sad. And so we don't know who... everyone is playing a certain role in our world. But that role is very interchangeable. Very not impermanent. It's very changeable. We've had people that were against us, and now there are super allies. And people who we've had really close, intimate relationships with as friends and lovers can't stand the sight of them now. So it's not fixed, people's role. People's roles are not fixed, so we should think like that. And then that creates some balance. Then to think all these people equally deserve to be happy. If they were happy, things would be much better all around. Nobody wants to suffer, and so then the same way with as compassion. Compassion is this yearning. Well, it's a yearning to free others from suffering. And love is loving kindness is wanting to give others happiness. Then joy is called sympathetic joy, or joy, feeling others' joy. Cultivating this feeling of joy when others are happy. That has to do with antidoting our envy and jealousy. Oh, they got the job. I wanted the job. It would have been much better if I had the job, if I got that job. So this joy means rejoicing in the happiness of others. Even, like, oh, somebody stole my something, my favorite picture, somebody stole my necklace, then there's the joy. You feel joyful that others are enjoying it. And then make it infinite. And then equanimity, these four what are called four boundless attitudes. It's a very worthy undertaking to cultivate these. And that an understanding of impermanence, an understanding of your own personal potential, having to do with this nature that is discoverable, or that is, that we can awaken to this nature. Have an understanding of the infallibility of cause and effect. These are the foundation for cultivating these four measurables. And these four measurables, founded on impermanence and appreciating our own potential and this karma, or cause and effect, these four measurables become the basis for these engaging in these six perfections. Four measurables has to do with our mental attitude. We're just changing our attitude. There's very little we can do at this point. How many people can we make happy, even if we became like the the ruler of the world, the benevolent dictator. Even if we became that, we couldn't. First of all, everyone wouldn't like us, and they wouldn't obey, and then we'd have to have it would get complicated. And still we couldn't remove all the suffering of the world. People have their personal lot in life, how they've landed in this life, and some people, it just won't work. That kind of power is not, has a limit. So we need to acquire this wisdom and compassion, this all-embracing compassion and the power that are inherent in our nature, but presently obscured. So with that, and with that sort of humility, but yet with a great over-the-top aspiration, then we engage in these practices of the paramitas, driven by this loving compassion, joy, and equanimity, based on the truth of impermanence, the cause and effect, and so forth, these basics. So each thing kind of builds on the other. So you can see then in generosity, then if it's based on all of the above, it's not just it's not just charity. There's more to it than that. There's a whole cultivation of an attitude, and then this is the behavior of the bodhisattva, is practicing generosity, and that truly uproots this attachment and discipline, which antidotes this aversion. And then this generosity. This patience antidotes this anger. Anger is the big destroyer of that precious attitude of wanting to benefit others. When we get angry, we're completely become cut off from that impulse. That altruistic impulse has been, the plugs pulled on that impulse. So patience is an important practice to cultivate. I think first, when we cultivate, actually all of these, and I think I mentioned earlier, and particularly with patience, we should know the benefit of being patient, and we should know the disadvantages of not being patient. We shouldn't just create these moral standards and then try to live up to them without really, and bypass our reasoning. Reasoning is very helpful. We really need to understand that it is to our distinct disadvantage to be impatient. Being impatient means being irritated, being angry, being enraged, hating, being aggressive. It's a chain of events that comes from an aversion, a stance of having an aversion for something occurring. That's why they say this Gampopa, he said his one definition of patience was he said, patience means always being prepared for anything that could arise while maintaining a sense of kindness. So the implication of patience means a feeling of ease that's accompanied by compassion. It's like if you're in a hurry and you're in a long line, at the supermarket, and then somebody's fumbling with something up above, or their card doesn't work, or they're looking for the penny that the cashier won't forgive them for not having, and then you think, oh, patience. Patience doesn't mean like cutting off. Okay, I'll just make a fist, put my hands in my pocket, and I'll just be patient here, I won't say anything, and that's not patience. Patience means that there's a presence of understanding and a presence of love and compassion. So you focus, you think, okay, what's going on? The cashier is just, this is her job, his job. This a person obviously is distressed. They can't find it. So you think and feel compassion for the situation, the whole situation. Why am I irritated? Because I have a personal agenda. And my personal agenda, I'm making more important than anybody else's in this whole store. And what's the basis of that? Nothing. There's no basis for that. The basis for that is your delusion. Your sense of conceit and self-importance. So patience means knowing and feeling. And it doesn't mean knowing you're not getting your way and feeling annoyed about it. Selfless. Always selfless. That's always the answer. All these things, generosity, it's about selflessness. A discipline, give up. Just give up negative actions. Forget your instincts. Train in the positive actions. Train in benefiting others. The patience, same. One patience is like I described, although it says patience in hardship. I mean, when it's happening to you, it's hardship. If you're getting 15, 20 seconds delay, you decide you're not going to take the chance on the orange light. You're going to stop, and it changes to red, and so you're sitting there fuming about having to wait for what? What's a light? What's the average span of a red light? 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And we're all, So this forbearance. That's actually good. We should. Because especially if you're just by yourself in the car. Cars are great, like great little retreat huts, They have so many opportunities to be generous and disciplined and patient, and one focused, and, very many things happen in a car. So the red light comes and you feel that first sense of ouch, that pain of having to stop. Then you recognize, oh, that's impatience. That's irritation. What's the benefit? Then your previous thinking about what's beneficial about patience and what's the flaws of impatience come. Oh, this is pain. I'm feeling pain. Identify it for what it is. You say, oh, I'm irritated because of this. That's not really what's happening. That's added. That's extra. That's what we call the imputation. We're imputing on our pain that you're irritated because the light changed red. What really is happening is that you are in pain because something happened that you didn't want to happen. So then you've called it what it is. Then practice patience. That's called patience in hardship. We get sick. We get 2 flat tires. So 1 flat tire I can be patient with. But 2 flat tires and a big job interview, or 2 flat tires and somebody's waiting to get picked up and it's dark, getting dark out. Then where's your patience? So then you grow. Patience is a growing thing. You grow it in hardship.
So in the hardship, when let's go back with the light, and you identify, that you're in pain. So do you let that feeling go, and then that would be the patience?
Well,
you identify the pain, but then where's the patience? You let go of the feeling of pain?
Actually, it's not necessary. But what on the Mahayana Bodhisattva path, you can say, oh, this feeling of pain, of irritation right now, this is what many people are experiencing right now. This is the cause, basically, of all the trouble on the earth. And now I'm capturing just a small piece of it. Then pray or make an aspiration that all of that suffering of others from this feeling substitutes for that, for them. May they be free of this feeling that I'm feeling now. Why should I and them feel it? I'll just feel it and I'll free them from it. Think that it's just a mental thing. It's all mental. All action begins in the mind. So it's very worthy to cultivate our mind in radical things like this. That's a very radical thought. To think, you could even say, I really pray and wish and will think that all the irritation in the world comes into this irritation that I am experiencing right now. That's even more radical.
I had the chance to see Lama Sering speak in Boulder. Lama Sering this summer, and she had mentioned that if you're in pain, like you're experiencing that pain for all the sentient beings, so nobody has to experience that pain again.
Yeah.
And is that in the connection with patience?
That's identical. Yeah, well, here, this is the situation. You have to have patience to come to that point where you can do that.
Okay.
I see. Yeah. You might think that, wow, if I did that, I'd get hurt. But it's only in your mind. Why do you still resist it if it's only in your mind? At this point in our practice, it can't really happen. But why are you afraid to wish it? To think it, The Mahayana training is you do that, definitely. Even you think of it as being a big cloud that comes from the whole universe and comes into your little irritation at a red light. Then you're really productive. You're both cultivating compassion on the one hand, and you're undermining that self-cherishing on the other hand. And it's that self-cherishing, that conceit, that is really the root of all of our suffering. It's like my agenda was to be in my car, not be hung up with this cashier. Or my agenda was to be, 100 yards further on my journey, not be stopped at this red light. That's so conceited. So anytime that's pointed out to us, that's why in the same tradition we talk about actually our enemies are more beneficial to us than our friends. from this, from an equanimity point of view. It's our enemies that make us. Enemy means anything that stands in your way. Basically, it's not like some tribal thing necessarily. Anything that stands in your way, we consider to be an enemy. But how can we practice patience if we don't have enemies? Friends, what friends do, and I love friends, This is just from a practice point of view. Friends, they build up our pride. They actually there's a tendency for friends to support you in your wrong-headed thinking. So from a spiritual point of view, who's helping you if patience is one of the qualities of the Buddha? It says, Shantideva says, we need two things to attain enlightenment. We need the inspiration and the belief or the idea of Buddha, and we need enemies. That's how we will. We need enemies, and then that just even like, how can we be generous unless there's not needy people around us? How can we be disciplined if we don't recognize that even in our own mind we have a tendency to do negative actions? Now, how can we be patient if we don't have opportunities to be patient? Sitting there with resentment and irritation is there's no practice there. Yeah, things like loss of health, loss of relationship, loss of living circumstances, loss of finances, loss of jobs. These are all opportunities to be patient. And if you have come to a decision that patience has value, and being impatient is disadvantageous. It's actually disadvantageous. It's not just that you're suspending being patient, but when you get irritated and you don't relate to it if you don't relate to it in a positive way, it eats you up. That's why it's called an affliction. It's called a mental affliction, anger. Not only does it make you feel bad in the moment, but then it, just like a stone thrown into a lake, it creates this ripple. But then also anger, it goes and it buries itself in our consciousness. And when something similar begins to arise, it relates to that old experience and reasserts itself again, takes rebirth again, as it were. Somebody looks like one of our old lovers that kicked us out. Just the look or the voice or something, and we have the same old reaction. So that's why it's called an affliction. We get afflicted by anger. It doesn't just come and go. It buries itself into our this one alaya, this one consciousness. It buries itself there. So that's very. This again, it's important to really say, well, what are the advantages of being patient, and what are the disadvantages of not being patient? It's just good to look. You can refer to lots of material to determine that. Okay.
Question on camera.
Yes.
And thinking about this, I've realized that most of the time when I'm impatient, it's because the reality is conflicting with my obligation to somebody else. Like maybe I didn't calculate my time well enough. I'm supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, and I'm stuck at the light, or I'm at the cash register that's taking too long, and then I feel this obligation to this other commitment. So how could I work with that sense of obligation or duty that's causing suffering for me in the moment? That you could call it impatience, but really underneath it is this sense of needing to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, being inhibited from doing.
Well, I mean, the basic, I don't think the basic truths involved don't change. It still has to do with the same thing, but then your own agenda, but you didn't plan it so well, or something happened.
It doesn't feel like my own agenda. That's the thing. It's like, in that situation, it doesn't feel like my own agenda. It feels like I'm the pawn of someone else's agenda. Like, I'm supposed to be there for them for something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
it feels hard to let go of that.
Yeah. I can't. I don't think I can answer that actually, because those are the kind of things that happen to good people. Really.
Yeah.
Really. I just have to. Things don't go the way that we always think they do. Best intentions, and people rely on us. Look, you have children, and where is a perfect parent? Where is a perfect parent? Certainly, other people are perfect parents, but not me. There's always that, because you just can't live up to the expectations that other people have all the time. We're not perfect. Maybe create an aspiration. Well, if I was enlightened, I would be able to manage my phenomena. That wisdom and compassion and power. Power over phenomena is one of the qualities that we need. And it's not even always knowable when we're late. I mean, this is sort of making an excuse for you or something, but you don't know what it is that other person is doing while they're waiting. That's not a good answer, but we just can't. There's so many things at work. Basically, if we have cultivating an understanding of impermanence and karma, this is more of a karma thing, and we can't predict karma. I have certain responsibilities, and I try to live up to those responsibilities, but the recipients of those responsibilities are not always in accord with my intention. We would say, like, the interdependence isn't there. There's no interdependence, or at least it's not there, time and space wise.
So kind of acknowledging there's two sides to the situation, and maybe my not being able to meet what I thought was the expectation is really a matter of both of our karma, and it's just
things happen because of causes and conditions. Yeah. And you try to create conditions for something to happen, but the cause is not always in alignment with that, or at least not at that particular point, at that point in time.
That was helpful.
It's kind of a karma study. Karma, in that sense, means it's impossible for something to happen if there's no cause, no matter what the conditions are. And no matter how you change the conditions, if there's a cause, at some point it has to mature. That action has to mature into an experience And we're talking second by second. It's not like we use metaphors, like trees and fruit and plants and things, but it's every second. Every second we've been sitting here, we are experiencing the playing out of causes and conditions. Nothing ever finds some basis where it lands. Everything is interdependent, interconnected. There's no basis for anything. Everything is impermanent, interdependent. What do you say? In flux. Okay, now it's it's time to end. So we didn't. Patience is a big topic. It's a big topic because it's the antidote for what destroys this attitude of this altruistic intention to wake up. What destroys that intention is anger. And what prevents that intention from deteriorating is patience. So it gets a lot of play in the Bodhisattva path. So naturally then there'd be a lot to say about it. A lot of teachings about it. But we'll end it at this point today. And
I wonder if I could ask before we close. I wondered if there's when you described having 2 flat tires and it's nighttime, you got to pick something up, and these things can pile. And I wonder. I observed in that scenario the ease and likelihood of despair. And so I guess my question is, how do you stopgap patience from being so infinitely engaged that it could become despair, become a helplessness?
compassion? Did you say? I'm sorry.
Patience.
Patience.
That one can let up the impulse to manage to such an extent that it becomes despair. Flat tires, nighttime, I gotta pick up my friend, I can't even turn over the engine, I give up.
Okay, well, as I say, there are certain foundations that patience builds on. One of them is an understanding of impermanence and cause and effect, and the general unsatisfactory nature of everything because of impermanence. Impermanence has a felt experience, a tone of experience, and that in Buddhism that's called dukkha. Dukkha? Dukkha, one translation is suffering. So we suffer when we suffer. We suffer when we suffer. So we're like, it's 2 sufferings. The one suffering can be because of not understanding the truth of suffering. The truth of suffering. As the Buddha's first teaching, was the most first teaching. Well, you want to become enlightened? He says. No, he didn't say that in that way either. But he says, they asked him, you're enlightened. Well, teach us how to become enlightened. He goes, okay, life is suffering. What kind of a teaching is that? Where's the enlightenment part? He never taught about enlightenment. He taught about it. The first teaching was the truth of suffering. If you want to be free of suffering, first you have to recognize it. So there's some of that there in what despair comes about because of the view that things aren't that things are supposed to go a little better. When we are experiencing suffering at the hands of others, at the hands of inanimate objects and things like that, we should take that as a teaching on the truth of suffering. Oh, now I'm experiencing what Buddha gave as his first teaching, was life is problematic. Basically, life is problematic. And just sit with that. Really understand it. He didn't say life is suffering, and so you should try to avoid suffering, or you should get over. He said, this is the first Dharma Chakra teaching is, life is suffering, or the truth of suffering. Understand suffering, he said. Understand suffering. And when you've understood suffering, that's when you become free of suffering. He said, understand suffering. If you understand suffering, you will have understood it. This kind of sutras are kind of repetitive like that. And when you have understood suffering, you are no longer suffering under the suffering. So there's the truth of suffering. Then there's not knowing the truth of suffering and thinking that you're suffering. It's like exceptional. Something different is happening. I'm suffering. So really then, like I say, when it's a hard lesson. That's the patience the patience is in that very practice. Patience in understanding the truth of suffering. It's called patience in undergoing the hardships of Dharma. The second kind of thing. One's, red lights and whatnot, sickness and things. The other one is patience with Dharma practice. It's too, sometimes it's just too profound. We can't. And despair is forgetting your potential. This one. Like the whole purpose is to realize your potential, realize your fullest, deepest potential. And so that's where, if Buddhism has faith, definitely. It's not just reason and logic and, antidotes and methodology, but there's some faith there. And one faith, the fundamental faith, is appreciating this you have a personal potential. That's the thing. And despair also has this sense of you're folding up underneath your like you're kind of enveloping your suffering. And here, like we were talking before about open it up. This is what everyone is experiencing. Open yourself up to the big picture of all beings are experiencing suffering like this that I'm experiencing now, you say, and worse. Probably much worse. And we have news. It's unbelievable the amount of material we have to see how much worse other towns, other cities, other countries, everyone's experiencing lots of suffering. It's in our face, so we should use it. We should appreciate that. Like right now, when if you're feeling a certain way, then use your vigor, your spirit, your energy, your vigor to break out of that personal sense of despair, to pay attention to others. What's going on with others, Children running down the street, in places, no mother, no father. All of these things, many things, many sufferings are happening. Animals suffering, the slaughter, I would go on and on. But that's when you really open up to others suffering. And you think, well, at least I can do that. Others who are suffering, they can't open up. Their suffering is so great that they're buried in it. But I still have some germ of opening that I can mature, that I can use. So like that, you have to. And then change the subject. Think about good things. What people are doing in the world that's good. All the good works that are being done. All the humanitarian things, all the environmental things, and really think of those things and then rejoice. And then if you have a spiritual interest, then think, that many people have the opportunity to meditate, or they're in retreat, or then rejoice, rejoice that there's bodhisattvas, and then rejoice that there's Buddhas. But start from your own experience, just good. We have 4 measurables. We don't have to get hung up on just the suffering and the compassion. We burn out, or what do they call it? Compassion fatigue. We have to be clever and know how to use these different things. So when compassion or the suffering is too much, okay, drop it. Then cultivate a joy, sympathetic joy. Rejoice for others that are having good experiences. Well, then we can get too much with the joy too.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, then you go with the equanimity.
Right.
And then equanimity loses its juice, because equanimity means the presence of love and compassion. But then it'll start to lose its juice. Then you go back to the happiness, wishing others happiness, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. They're not sacred principles. They are projects. And a good practitioner, a good project manager of those 4 elements knows when to use which one when. That's the work of a practitioner, is to be clever and smart about putting those puzzles together at the right time for the right duration. We're training our minds. We're training our mind. Training means duality. So it's not supposed to be perfect. Perfect in this sense would be non-dual. We're not talking about that. So there's going to be ups and downs. It's okay. That's how it goes. Okay. Atisha, a great master in Tibet. Oh, no, I can't. No. Anyway, he was a great master in Tibet. I'll leave it at that. We should dedicate the merit of our conversation today to the enlightenment of all. May all beings find patience, and may that patience be rich with love and compassion. Real patience is not just refraining from exploding. It's really the presence of a quality of love and compassion. So we dedicate that matures and reaches transcendence for all sentient beings. All the virtue of this practice and all that is gathered throughout the 3 times I dedicate to all beings without exception, so that they may attain Buddhahood.